When I went to Japan, it was interesting to hear that Toshiki's squat program was actually very similar to mine. His squat program is basically 75 to 85% 5x5, followed by 50% 3 sets of 10, 5 times per week. Could be slightly around there, but that's basically what it is. He said there was no peaking phase, basically nothing. Simply just doing 5x5 and adding more and more weight each session. Eventually, he just rested after training like that for a long time and went for a water max and got new PRs. He said he did something like 250 to 260 for 5 sets of 5 multiple times before squatting 320. Quite interesting. Because my squat program was very similar, didn't have any peaking phase, and yeah, I did the 5x5 a lot. So this is basically my program if I had to write it down. So you can see here, I basically squatted every single day. So this is an example. This is day 1. Did back squat 5x5, of course. The program was 1 to 5 weeks long, usually. Sometimes it would be as short as like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll test my water max. But on average, I'd say it was 1 to 5 weeks long. And you can see I added in the Olympic lifts I did. Because the back squats are so tiring, wasn't able to do much Olympic lifting. So I just tried to maintain it as best as possible. I just put in RPE values here, so I put 8 to 9.5. I didn't follow RPE at the time. Not even sure like RPE existed back then as like a concept. Maybe it did, but not many lifters used that at all. But yeah, this is the RPE if I had to put in an RPE. I didn't follow, I didn't use any percentages as well. I just chose a weight I could do for 5 sets of 5 with not much difficulty. So maybe for the first set, it would be RP 8, and then by the last set, it'd be RP 9.5. I would always try to avoid RP 10 sets because I believe they're very fatiguing. So day 1, back squat 5x5. Day 2, the next day, no rest day. So I put in example days here, Monday, Tuesday. So Monday 5x5, Tuesday 5x5, Wednesday 5x5 again. So after 3 days of squatting in a row, which is something I used to do, sometimes I would actually do 4 days of squatting in a row. But yeah, the last day it would obviously be more difficult, so that would be the challenge. Usually I just keep the weight the exact same for all these days, the 3 days. So the last day would be more challenging. And then usually I'd take like a day off. So on the program here, it's written Thursday, day off. I'd recover a bit. And on day 5, Friday here, I'd feel stronger, like much stronger compared to day 1, day 2, and day 3. So for example, if I did something like 130 kilos, 5x5 for day 1 to day 3, and it wasn't, there wasn't any RP 10 sets, it wasn't that difficult, but was difficult enough, then I would predict I'd be able to do 135 on day 5 here, no problem. Since I was able to do 130 kilos 5x5 on Wednesday, day 3, like under fatigued conditions. So that's what I usually do. I try to do like the same weight, like 3 days in a row, and then take a day off, and then try to bump up the weight for the next day. Then on day 6, I try to do the same weight as day 5. Of course, I'd auto-regulate as well. Maybe it wouldn't be the same weight, maybe it'd be slightly less or slightly more depending on how I felt. And of course, there's always like Olympic lifts on all these days. And sometimes I'd have to take like a lighter day. So here for day 7, I wrote down 65% of my best squat, 3 sets of 5. So just give myself a rest from like squatting so heavy for 5x5. Not exactly a day off. There's still Olympic lifts here as well, of course. So I didn't really follow or write down what I did like during this time. For a lot of my weightlifting career, actually, I didn't write down anything. Like, this may seem like a huge mistake not to write down what you're doing, but I think like tracking what you're doing like all the time is kind of overrated. And also I did have like some structure to my training. I would train consistently at the same time every day and the same number of sessions per week. I would simply just memorize what I did and then alter like the program in my head. I just wouldn't write down anything. So obviously the primary focus of this program was squatting. And of course I did Olympic lifts like I mentioned. I definitely like alternated between periods of focusing on my squat and improving my Olympic lifts. And this is what I did when I was young. I just squatted a lot. It was increasing my squat that allowed me to progress quickly in the Olympic lifts. Like I used this program in short bursts. Then I would just focus less on squatting and more on the Olympic lifts. Like, because this program was so difficult, it wasn't possible to focus on much Olympic lifting. So I basically tried to match my Olympic lifting numbers to my squat numbers. For example, at one point my squat was 185 kilos and I could snatch 112.5 and clean and jerk 140. You can go back to my old YouTube videos and actually find those videos. So my thought at the time was if I could squat 200 kilos, then I should be able to snatch 120 and clean and jerk 150. And that's pretty much what I did. I increased my squat to 200 kilos and I got those two numbers. Worked well. So I just repeated this method until it stopped working. Like, it worked all the way up to 230 kilos squat, where I snatched 140 kilos and clean and jerked 170 kilos and also cleaned 180 kilos. I then used this like same method later on in my career with the now famous 5x5 pause squat videos on my YouTube channel. So the idea was to spend a short period of time focusing on squatting, maintain this new squatting strength as best as possible, and then shift the focus on more practice with the Olympic lifts. So with this method, I was able to add 10 kilos to my squat in a short period of time, usually 2 to 4 weeks at times.
Two rep PR, 190, 2 rep PR.
So this sounds great, right? But what are the drawbacks? I'd say this is a high risk, high reward program. You can make serious progress, but it can also lead to some serious overuse injuries. This program worked extremely well for me because I'm probably, I don't know, genetically more resistant to injury than others. Like, I had a friend with average genetics try this style of programming at one point. Like, it definitely worked for him in the short term. However, he got a back injury and he regressed. Unfortunately, this happened to me with my current hip injury. Now I struggle to progress with this type of training. So since the main focus of this program is to increase the back squat, it prioritizes this by placing it first every single session. The first exercise you do is the exercise you make the most progress with. You can use this strategy for any exercise, really. For example, if your clean and jerk is weaker than your snatch, then it might be wise to do clean and jerks before snatches in your training sessions. This doesn't work for all exercises. Like, if your strict press is weak, you may not benefit much from placing it first, since it's not a difficult exercise to perform. It's not tiring. Placing it at the end is ideal also because upper body muscle pump and fatigue can interfere with Olympic lifts if you did it first. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you train like this, you will not have much energy or motivation really to perform many other exercises afterwards. You may feel lightheaded, nauseated after doing sets of 5. Like, from my experience, it is possible to do some exercises with enough weight for progression after 5x5, but for example, I have no problem performing moderate to heavyweight jerk off rack, RF blocks, bench press, and strict press, meaning I could actually progress with these particular exercises alongside doing heavy 5x5. Most exercises, though, are very difficult to perform with enough weight to make meaningful progress. You certainly wouldn't want to do heavy deadlifts if you follow this style of programming. It would interfere with the squat progression a lot, and you'd be so fatigued from squatting, you would struggle to lift enough weight in the deadlift to progress. The majority of the times I followed this style of programming, I focused almost entirely on squatting and maintained my Olympic lifts as best as possible. So here is an example of the squat program with weights added. Like I mentioned, I never wrote anything during this time, but if I had to write it down, this is what the program looked like. So this is the squat program with actual examples. This is when I brought my squat from 180 kilos to 190 kilos, and it took me around 3 weeks to do that. So to choose a weight for the program, I chose a weight for 5x5 that was heavy but comfortable for me, where form would not break down significantly. So avoiding RP 10 sets basically. This was the key to progress with the program. If I chose a weight too heavy and performed many RP 10 sets, then injuries would be more likely and fatigue would certainly accumulate. The chosen weight was 150 kilos. So this was an RP 8 to RP 9 weight, I guess, to begin with. So when I squatted like this, I auto-regulated a lot. If I struggled with a warm weight, then I would just have a lighter day. So you can see here, day 1, back squat, week 1, 150 kilos, 5x5. Tuesday would increase the weight by 5 kilos, but only do 3 sets of 5. Because if I continue doing 2 more sets of 5 at the same weight, it would be too difficult. So there'd be too many like RP 10 lifts. Day 3, try to do 155 for 5 sets of 5. Of course, this would be a very difficult day because of the accumulated fatigue from day 1 and day 2. So after that, took a day off, came back to the gym, did 5x5 again with the same weight, 155 kilos. But this time it was way easier than day 3. Day 6, I attempted to add another 5 kilos, but didn't do the full 5x5 with 160 kilos. Day 7, felt very tired, so just went and did 120 kilos, 3 sets of 5. And then day 1, week 2, felt more fresh, was able to do 160 5x5, and basically just repeated this process until I was able to do 165 5x5 3 days in a row almost. And at that point, I was very confident to squat 190 kilos, and that's what I did here on day 7. And you can kind of see this mini taper before the water max. So day 5 here, or day 4, day off, day 5, very easy squatting, but not so light, just a lower volume. Day 6 was extremely easy, like week 1, day 7, and day 7 just went for 190 kilos and successfully made it. So yeah, that was how I squatted when I was younger. So the video with the squat program explained was a video made for Patreon. I just included that in the ebook because I thought I explained it quite well in that video. So the next program after that is the Olympic lifting focus program. And as I mentioned in the ebook, I alternated between focusing like almost exclusively on squats while just maintaining the Olympic lifts, and then transitioning to focusing on the Olympic lifts. That was kind of the way I progressed for a very long time. My philosophy, I guess, was to get as strong as possible and then to translate that strength onto the snatch and the clean and jerk. So you can see at the top of this program, I put some numbers here. So it says 80 snatch, 100 kilos clean and jerk. If you see a weightlifter type out numbers like this, it usually just means snatch, clean and jerk. So I brought my snatch from 80 kilos to 147, and my clean and jerk from 100 kilos to 177.5 kilos using this method. And keep in mind, this isn't what I followed exactly, I would say, like during this time. If I had to write down what I did, this would be it. Of course, I did other exercises that aren't listed on this program. I did different sets and reps. I played around with higher rep back squats for a while, but for the majority of the time, this is basically what I did. So just to confirm that you know, for all the programs on this ebook, it's always written as sets times reps and not the other way around. So for the first day here, it said power clean and jerk 80 to 90%, 7 sets of 1. Then the next exercise is back squat, 6 sets of 3. It's not 6 reps, 3 sets. It's always sets times reps, just to make sure that you know that. And it's in that format for the entire ebook. For some of the later programs, for the Polish weightlifting programs, my old coach, like back in 2011, sent me those programs in a different format. So I had to convert them into this format with the same table, etc., just to make it easier to read. And I did this for like all the programs on the website. So it took a while to like go back like through old emails and find all these programs and then change the format and everything. But anyways, yeah, I would spend usually, I would say 4 to 5 weeks around that length of time doing the previous squat program, the 5x5 squat program. And then I would get a 1 rep max, like a new PR in the back squat. This meant that I was strong enough to increase my 1 rep max in the snatch and clean and jerk. Of course, it wasn't like instant. I didn't like hit a new PR in a back squat, try out, like go for a max snatch, go for a max clean and jerk and get in a PR. It wouldn't be like that. It would take a couple of weeks. So for this like Olympic lifting focused phase or program, I usually did it for around 5-6 weeks, as I listed here on the program. And you can see I did a lot of maxing out when I was young. I max out very often, pretty much like every single week, multiple times per week. But keep in mind, this was after I focused on squats, after I spent like 5 weeks just doing multiple sets and reps with back squats. Like during the time I did that crazy squat program, I never went for a 1 rep max snatch or 1 rep max clean and jerk. So I would say like throughout my entire weightlifting career, I never really trained like less than 6 times per week. It was always 6 times per week or more. I never tried like training 3 times a week, 4 times a week. I never bothered with that. I just went to the gym 6 times per week minimum. And that is really the key to progression, like a lot of times with weightlifting. The more often you're exposed to doing the snatch, clean, and jerk, the better like your technique progresses. It's so important for technique, like frequency of training. That is the number one way to improve your technique. Just increase the frequency. And you can see with this program, there's 6 sessions per week, of course. So on day 1, it starts with snatch. I'd usually just work up to a heavy single or go for 1 rep max. To be honest, like back then, I didn't know too much about what I was doing. But this is actually a good approach back then because I was young and going through puberty. So it was possible to get like a new 1 rep max like every single week. So it was wise to go for like heavy singles and 1 rep maxes quite often. And I mentioned that later on in the ebook. So of course I wouldn't go heavy on like every single exercise in a training session. I would actually rarely go for a max snatch, max clean and jerk, and max back squat all in one session. I would usually try to spread that out throughout the week. So yeah, you can see for day 1, there's power clean and jerk, and it's just 7 singles with a percentage between 80 and 90%. So I would like start at a weight like 80%. Maybe do that for I don't know, 2 or 3 singles, and then I would bump it up to 85%. I would increase the weight slowly, so I'd use like ascending sets. So that's what that means, 80 to 90%. And you can see the squat volume is still like quite high on this program. It's not that low, like 6 sets of 3, that like between 80 and 90%. That's not easy. That will fatigue you. But the reason I did this much volume is because I needed to. I noticed that if I didn't do enough squat volume, if I did something like, I don't know, 4x3 with a lower percentage, like my strength would like drop dramatically. That's one thing I really noticed, like when I first started training, I needed a back squat like every day. If I took a few days off back squatting, my squat would get weaker. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. And another thing to keep in mind here that's important on this program is that I did either snatch or clean jerk or a variation of those 2 lifts every single session. So there wasn't a day where I'd only focus on snatch. There wasn't a day where I'd only focus on clean jerk. It always had snatch and clean jerk related movements. And I think that's so important for like technique development, just to get as much exposure to those lifts as possible. And you can see I don't do like full lifts back to back. So you can see for day 2, instead of doing full snatch, I do power snatch. On day 1, I do power clean and jerk. So that means on day 2, I do full clean and jerk. And on day 3 is power clean and jerk. So I alternate between power and full lifts. The reason I did this was to manage fatigue, basically. Because if I did full lifts like every single day, it'd be too fatiguing, because full lifts are heavier than powers, and powers are less fatiguing. Also, with power variations, you really focus on speed. I mean, at the time, I didn't know the benefit of doing that, really. I just did that kind of out of instinct because, yeah, the full lifts, like I said, they felt more fatiguing, so I couldn't do that like every single day. Also, I rarely maxed out in the power variations. Of course, I did max out in them, but definitely not as often as the full lifts. But it's kind of funny thinking back to what I did and like the amount of squatting I did, even though this wasn't a squat focused cycle at all. Like when I trained like this, like for most people, if they did this with their squat, they'd get injured, they'd get fatigued. Definitely don't recommend you do this. And I was just doing this to like maintain my squat. Of course, during periods like this, I would actually make PRs in the back squat, but I didn't really gain strength in the squat. I would say, like during these phases, I really just peaked my squat. The majority of the strength gained was during the crazy 5x5 squat program. So yeah, there's not really much to say about this program. It's extremely basic. Like day 1 is almost the exact same as day 3 with reduced squat intensity and volume. Day 4 I still back squatted because I needed to do that much volume just to maintain my strength. Friday, yeah, I would sometimes like max out on both the snatch, clean, and jerk, but like I said, that wouldn't be as common as doing either snatch or clean and jerk on like separate days. And of course there would be like lighter days where I would go kind of like a moderate weight on the back squat and just do power variations to recover. Also, I never did much variation at all. These are pretty much the only exercises I focused on. I never even like isolated the lifts. I never did like jerk off blocks, jerk off rack, never just did cleans. I always did snatch and clean and jerk, power snatch, power clean and jerk. Yeah, they were the main exercises I did. And I didn't front squat a lot. I mentioned that in the book. I should have done more front squats. Yeah, there was like weeks at a time, months at a time even, where I didn't front squat once. So would I recommend anything like this at all? Not exactly how it's written. I definitely wouldn't recommend this. The main problem with prescribing a program like this to I don't know, general population, the average weightlifter, is they don't need to squat this much at all. But the basic principle of increase your strength, then focus on Olympic lifts, that can be applied to your own training. That can be applied like to the average weightlifter. You can have a strength block where you focus a lot on your weaknesses. If your overhead strength is weak, then focus on strict press and push press. If your squat is weak, then focus a lot on squat, and then slowly transition to doing more Olympic lifts, and then eventually focus on what are max snatch and what max clean and jerk, and your maxes should improve. And that isn't really like a revolutionary idea. Like, in a way, I was kind of doing block periodization, I guess. Like, I had a strength phase where I focused a lot on squatting, because squatting strength is the most important strength for the snatch, clean, jerk. Not the only strength you need. Like, of course, upper body strength and pulling strength is important, but squat strength is usually always going to be the main thing people need to focus on. And then, of course, I would transition from that program to Olympic lifting focus program. Many programs are designed with this principle in mind. So with the squat program, I basically use that method to get up to a 250 kilo squat. And with this program, the Olympic lifting focus program, I use that method of training to get up to a 147, 177 kilo clean and jerk. Now, comparing these lifts, like a 147 kilo snatch to a 250 kilo back squat, like, that is a massive gap. Like, I should have been able to snatch, I don't know, like 160 kilos with that level of squat strength. So there was definitely an issue with this program. And I would say the main issue with this program was, the lack of practice with the Olympic lifts. Like, I was just doing singles. If I did doubles and triples, I would have got more practice, more technique practice with the Olympic lifts. My technique was the weakness, and I'll talk about that later on in the ebook. So now on to my favorite program in this entire ebook. And this is the program I'd recommend you try to emulate the most and draw the most inspiration from. Like, the program on my website, the 15-week weightlifting program, like, is heavily inspired by it. So the main principles of this program, I would say, is very basic exercises, like very sport specific to the sport of weightlifting. So just like the previous type of training I did, there wasn't a lot of variations. There wasn't any block snatches, there wasn't any hang snatches, there wasn't jerk off blocks, there wasn't push press, strict press, none of those exercises. It was simply snatch, power clean and jerk, full clean and jerk, back squat, front squat. Exercises that were new to me were snatch pull and clean pull. Of course, I did try like clean pulls and snatch pulls in the past, but I didn't do it consistently, and I certainly didn't do it for this many like sets and reps. Now, you might look at this program and think, oh, this is kind of like the Bulgarian program, but honestly, it's quite far away from like Bulgarian type programming. Just because like the exercises are basic, just because the exercises are similar to the exercises used in the Bulgarian weightlifting program, which is, just the basic lifts, like high specificity lifts. This certainly does not mean it's like close to like the Bulgarian program. The main difference, the huge difference, is the volume. Now, if you like look through like all the days here, like let's look at day 1, week 1. You can just see the number 6 a lot. So there was like 6 sets of 3 in the snatch, 6 sets of 2, power clean and jerk. Keep in mind, like the clean and jerk is a 2-part lift. So doing 3 reps is really like doing like 6 reps. Like doing sets of 3 in the clean and jerk, power clean and jerk, is now equivalent to doing sets of 3 in the snatch or power snatch. So doing the double is, you do 4 lifts. And then there's snatch pulls, 6 sets of 3. back squat, 6 sets of 3. So a crazy amount of volume in the Olympic lifts. And this was like the newest aspect of training, type of training to me. Like I was not conditioned and I was not used to doing like triples in a snatch. In fact, I don't think I've ever did like a triple or a double in a snatch in the past. I really just focus on singles, especially so with the clean and jerk. I never did a double in the clean and jerk at all. So when I first started this program, it took quite a while to adapt to it. It was pretty hard in the beginning, even though the weight was light. I'd say like a minor mistake, like when I first started doing this program, is the weight was a bit too heavy. Like I could have started like with, you know, very light weights. I could have started by doing like literally like, I don't know, 95 kilos in the snatch for 6 sets of 3. Like for the first like 1 to 3 weeks, like that low of a weight, maybe 95, 100 kilos, 105 kilos for week 3, something like that, like a slow progression in weight, because I was just not used to doing this much volume, like as you can see from like the previous program I did. So that's a tip I have for people, is like when you transition to like a program that is much higher in volume, you can like start with very low percentages. You can start with like 60%, just to get accustomed to the program, just so you know how it feels. But anyways, I put the percentages next to the sets and reps here. So for the snatch, day 1, it was between 80 and 82.5%. Usually I would just pick a weight and stick to it. It would never really change throughout the sets performed. So I wouldn't start at like 110 in the snatch and then increase it to 115. I usually just stick to, I don't know, weight like 112 for the 6 sets of 3. For the power clean and jerk, day 1, 70%. So the powers were quite light in this program throughout the program. Like the increases week to week were quite small, like compared to the full lifts. And the reasoning behind that is because the power lifts were mainly used to work on speed and technique. They weren't like the full lifts where, you know, I was actually trying to push on the weight and like improve those exercises. Like the power variations were just used as a tool to develop speed. And in brackets, I wrote of best a clean and jerk. So 70% of my best clean and jerk, that's what I did for the power clean and jerk. And for the snatch pull, that was 105 to 110% of my best snatch. So if my best snatch was 100 kilos, then I would do snatch pulls with 105 or 110 kilos. And the back squat was always moderate. The RPE percentage was never really that high and never really pushed back squats in this program. In fact, when I followed this program for like 3 months, basically, my back squat didn't really get any stronger, maybe slightly stronger. The main purpose was to maintain it. So you can see I just wrote an 80 to 82.5%. So the first like part of this program in the ebook, I put percentages and it increases week to week. So you can see in the next column, it says week 2 to week 12. So let's say on day 1, in the snatch, I did 120 kilos, 6 sets of 3. Week 2, I would either do 120 kilos, 6 sets of 3, or 122.5 kilos, 6 sets of 3. Sometimes I would repeat the same weight as the previous week. And if you go down further in the ebook, you can see I actually did the full example. Like this is basically the program sent to me. This was from week 1 to week 12, and you can see the actual weights I did. So this is a good example of how I increase the weights every week. So I hope you understand what I wrote here for the first part. And you can see for the strength exercises, the weight increase was bigger. It was between 0 and 5 kilos instead of 0 and 2.5 kilos. And this is because the potential to increase these exercises is greater. It's easier to add kilos onto these strength movements because the weight is higher, and they're easier to add weight onto. Whereas the Olympic lifts are quite technical, so it might be more productive to actually just keep the weight the same for like the Olympic lifts and not increase them as aggressively every single week. And for some weeks on end, like I wouldn't even like add weight onto the back squat or the snatch pull or clean pull or any exercise, or like any other strength exercise like that. The purpose was just to maintain them. But basically on the second column, I'm showing like the minimum and the maximum increase you can make week to week. And my coach was the person that inputted the weights. He decided what weights I should have done. It wasn't based off like percentages or RPE. And I think that's just like an underrated thing with coaching people, like just inputting the weight that you should do instead of basing it off like percentages or RPE. Like I write about that in the section below these programs. Like that's the way I write programs when I coach people. Like I never really put in percentages unless it's their first time following a program. I usually just input the weight I think they should do based off how they perform the Olympic lifts. So let's say, for example, someone can snatch, like I gave this example in the ebook, if someone can snatch 100 kilos, but they have very sloppy technique, very inconsistent technique, is it right for them to do like a percentage, like 80% for a couple of sets? Probably not, because they could probably miss 80% multiple times because their technique is so inconsistent. So it might be wise for them to do a very low percentage, like 60%, 65%, just to, develop consistency with the lift and improve their technique. So that's why there's no percentages minus the first week of this program. The weight was chosen by the coach and kind of by me as well, based off my feedback. Like I would sometimes like tell my coach, oh, I think I can do this weight next week with not a lot of technical errors. Like, can you apply that principle to yourself? Like, should you choose the weight instead of like picking a percentage increase every single week? Yeah, it takes a while, especially like if you have no experience doing this. Like beginners would be awful at doing that, which is why beginners following percentages is probably better versus them just choosing the weight they think they should do. Like this kind of advice, this idea is reserved for like high intermediate level lifters and advanced level lifters. But the key is to really just get a coach and get them to tell you what you should do. So just like the previous program, it alternated between power lifts, power variations, not power lifts, and full lifts. So day 1 was snatch, day 2, power snatch, day 3, snatch, day 4, power snatch, day 5, snatch. And the same for the clean and jerk. So day 1, power clean and jerk. Day 2, clean and jerk. Day 3, power clean and jerk. Day 4, like I wouldn't always follow this rule. Day 4 was a light day, so I didn't do any full lifts, but so that was a power clean and jerk. Like if you had to compare the two, like full snatch and full clean and jerk, you can't do full clean and jerk as often as like a full snatch. Like the full snatch isn't as fatiguing, and that's why there's more full snatches on this program versus full clean and jerks. So yeah, you can see day 1 and day 3 are pretty much the exact same, but day 3 is definitely harder than day 1 because you're training under fatigued conditions. So in the brackets I gave example days. Day 1 would usually be, or always be, Monday. Day 3 would always be Wednesday. So there was no break in between these sessions at all. So it'd be quite fatiguing to do the day 3 session. Sometimes the weight on day 3 would be slightly lighter, or usually just the same as day 1. Day 2 has slightly different exercises. Instead of snatch pulls and full snatches, there's clean pulls and power snatches, and of course full clean and jerk. Day 4, this was Thursday. This is always a light session. Now, the purpose of this session was to maintain technique, basically, because like I mentioned in the last video, like training the Olympic lifts frequently is very important for like technique development. So this day, even though it's very light, it was quite necessary to do. It basically ensured that I didn't forget to snatch or forget to clean and jerk before the heavy day, which is day 5. It basically like primed my technique for that day. Now, of course, it wasn't always a maximum. I wouldn't push it all the time, but it would certainly always be heavy. And you can see the way I've written it here. It isn't a 1 max every single week. I basically worked up to max triple in the snatch, or heavy triple in the snatch, and the heavy or max double in the clean and jerk. So I would work up to these like max or heavy triples or doubles slowly, as you can see. So it started at 80% by tree. So if you can imagine your snatch is 100 kilos, you start by doing 80 kilos for a triple, then 85 kilos for a triple, then 90 kilos for a triple. Then the next week, you would add 2.5 or 0 to 2.5 kilos onto all those tree sets. So you would do something like 82.5 kilos, 87.5 kilos for tree, and then 92.5 kilos for tree. If that was difficult, then maybe on week 3, you would repeat those same weights. And then on week 3, you make that easily, then you would increase the weight by 2.5 kilos on each of the sets again. So you would finish with a 95 kilo snatch for 3 reps. So instead of going for a 1 max on the snatch and clean and jerk, I went for a max triple and a max double instead. And the advantage to doing this was, first of all, it was more volume, more practice. Like these 3 sets in the snatch, in total, I did 9 reps with, weights that were heavy, like above 85%, versus just going for 1 max where I would do maybe like 2 or 3 lifts above 85%. Also, this is safer than going for 1 max because the weight is lighter. And that's the main benefit of this program, really, because I was doing like triples all the time in the snatch and doubles all the time in the clean and jerk. The weight overall was lighter. I got more practice technique. I learned to clean and jerk in a safer manner. I learned to snatch safely because I got so much practice in. So I really avoided injury for a long time doing this program, even though it was heavy every single week. Like, just imagine if I did this program and instead of doing 6 sets of 3 in the snatch, like all this volume, I did, I don't know, something like 10 singles in the clean and jerk at a heavy weight, at a heavier percentage. Like, that would put a lot more stress on my joints than doing something like 6 sets of 2. This is when I brought my max from 147 in the snatch, and 177 kilos in the clean and jerk to 152 kilos in the snatch and 190 kilos in the clean and jerk. And you can see the weights I did for every single week. And I certainly did finish with a 152 kilo snatch and then 190 kilo clean and jerk. There's videos of that on my YouTube channel. But yeah, if you look through the program, you can see there was weeks where I just kept the weight the exact same as the previous week. Like if you look at week 8 for the snatch day 1 and week 9 for the snatch day 1, you can see the weight is the exact same. I would only increase the weight when I was ready, basically, and when my coach said I should. So yes, you'll notice there was no deloads at all on this program. And I go over that in the ebook. That was definitely a mistake. I kept grinding with this program. I certainly made like very good progress, but yeah, it didn't last long because I didn't take a break. I didn't take a deload. Also, you'll notice the lack of like different phases in this program. Like there's no, I don't know, like high volume phase. There's no peaking phase really. But keep in mind, this is weightlifting, and weightlifting isn't powerlifting. Like block periodization, like the need to do like high volume phases, hypertrophy phases, isn't as necessary in weightlifting. So there's actually no issue doing a program like this for weeks on end. Like this is what I needed with my weightlifting training. I needed to do like a lot of volume on the snatch and clean and jerk, and just maintain my back squat. Like I didn't do anything like, I don't know, 4 sets of 10 on the back squat. That certainly wasn't necessary for me. And also because the max triples and max doubles were like pretty close to, actually no, they eventually surpassed my like best water max in the snatch, clean, jerk. Like that meant I was definitely ready for more weight beyond the weights I did. So like you can see on week 10, I doubled 180 kilos in the clean jerk. Now that was 2.5 kilos over my best clean and jerk of all time. So I just beat my clean and jerk max by doing a double, which is crazy. So that increased my confidence a lot. And the next week, I easily did a 185 kilo clean and jerk. And keep in mind, this is all on my YouTube channel. If you go back on my old videos, you can find all these videos. So after that week of doing 185 kilos, I did 190. So like the difference between 180 and 190 isn't that drastic. So there was no real need to have like a peaking phase, because I was already kind of peaking anyway towards the end of the program just by maxing out my snatch and clean and jerk. Like the difference between like 3 reps and one rep isn't that drastic. So after that competition, I took a short break. Well, I should have taken a break. My coach recommended that I did, but yeah, stupidly, I still trained. I did a bunch of squats. That was pretty stupid. I did that off program. But after a while, he gave me another program, and this is it. This is the 9 sessions per week program, the Polish weightlifting program 2. This is when I first really started training twice per day. Of course, I had experience doing that while I trained in Poland, but this is the first time I did it for like an extended period of time. So you can see here, I divided up the days. You can see day 1, that's the AM session, and it's day 1 again, the PM session. So the time I trained usually was 10:30 AM and 4:30 PM. So that's why it's called AM session, PM session. And you can see for day 2, it's only 1 session that's in the AM. Day 3, 2 sessions. Day 4, which is the light day, which is similar to the last program, just 1 session that day. Day 5, quite easy in the morning compared to day 1, day 3, but there is 2 sessions on Friday. And then day 6 is quite similar to day 2, just 1 session that day. So again, there was no real like distinct phases during this program. I basically did the exact same thing every week, and I just increased the weights on each exercise. So overall, this was pretty much like the hardest program I ever did. Like if you look at the volume of this program, it's absolutely insane. And as I mentioned above in the ebook, there's multiple different approaches to training twice per day, but this wasn't a good approach in my opinion because it added so much volume. The increase in frequency should have been gradual. I shouldn't have like increased the volume at all. I should have just practiced training twice per day because I really wasn't used to it. So let's go through the program. So day 1, you can see 6 sets of 3 in this front squat. A reasonably high percentage. So this was quite fatiguing to do, along with snatch and snatch pull in the morning. So the snatches were like heavy in the morning, that they were not light. And I remember these like snatches in particular were quite difficult. Like I noticed it's difficult to do like heavy Olympic lifts in the morning. I guess snatch, like going heavier in the snatch, it's easier than going heavier than clean jerk in the morning, but it was still hard. I didn't really struggle with the front squats too much or the snatch pull. It was the snatch that I struggled the most with. And even that alone, like just the morning session, like that's a reasonable amount of volume to do. Maybe even too much for some people. And then I came in later that day and did even more volume than that morning session. Like you can see the clean and jerk, there's 6 sets of 2 and they weren't light at all. Clean pulls similar to snatch pulls. Like with the previous program, I alternated between snatch pulls and clean pulls. But in this program, I did them in the same day, which is just insane. And in my opinion, the most ridiculous part of this was doing even more squats. There was no need for like this much volume in the strength exercises. This is way too much. So I was doing 12 sets of squats in a day. Absolutely insane. Like 3 sets at a high percentage, like 80 to 85%. So that was quite difficult and just a pointless amount of volume. Pointlessly training very hard. And like the days where I only trained once a day, the squats were still heavy. Like you can see on day 2, I still did like 80 to 85% for a 6 sets of 3. And then day 3, another 12 sets of squats. Like just looking at this program, it's just way too hard. Like approach I could have done was I could have just done like the strength exercises in the morning. And I did this way later on when I got coached by Gabriel. Like just doing the strength exercises in the morning. I could have just done, I don't know, on day 1, just front squat and snatch pull. Then in the evening session, the PM session, do the snatch and the clean and jerk. That would have been fine. That almost would have been still too much even. But it would have been a lot more reasonable than what's written down here. So you'll notice a new exercise on this program, the press in split. And the purpose of this strength exercise was because my overhead position was weak and my split position was weak. Honestly, I don't think this is that good of an exercise because like the weights I was using in this exercise were very light because I was very weak in the strict press. And well, when you use a strict press, it's far below what you're doing in the jerk. So I question the benefit of this exercise really. I probably should have just done like a regular like strict press or push press. Like just pausing the split position with 60 kilos wasn't going to strengthen my split position. I needed to pause in the split position with like the weight I was actually doing in the clean and jerks. And similar to the last program, day 4 isn't much difference, almost the same, just a very light session to allow me to recover for day 5, which was heavy. And as I did when I was in Poland, I maxed out or went for a heavy single on the front squat every morning when I was following this program. Now, the evening session of day 5 was a bit ridiculous, in my opinion. Like, it would have been much more reasonable for me to work up to like a heavy double or even a heavy single. It was kind of ridiculous that I did even more sets, like 6 sets of 2 at a very high percentage. And then day 6, a bit more variation than the other days. Like we have a complex in here finally for some reason. But yeah, still very high volume. Like there's 5 exercises here and there's 6 sets on each of them. This is far too much volume. I'd even question whether this program would work for like an enhanced athlete, like using gear. I still think it's too much volume. And yeah, one of the main issues of this program was I got very good at doing, 6 sets of 3 in the snatch and 6 sets of 2 in the clean jerk. I did not get better at going for 1 rep max snatch or clean jerk because I didn't practice these at all. And I didn't even really go for like a max triple in the snatch or a max double in the clean jerk. Like at my peak, I was able to do 180 kilos in the clean jerk for 6 sets of 2. And honestly, during that time, if I maxed out like my clean and jerk double, I probably would have gotten just a tiny bit above that, maybe like 185 or something. And I could have achieved that, like 182 for a double without doing this much volume. So in a way, I wasn't really training for what weightlifting is, like a 1 rep max snatch and a 1 rep max clean jerk. Like I didn't even have that as the end goal in mind. So yeah, a very aggressive program. Definitely don't recommend you try anything like this. Just hammering yourself with a lot of volume isn't going to make you progress. Even the benefit of doing high volume training, which is just getting like loads and loads of practice with the snatch, clean and jerk, didn't benefit me here at all because I was so fatigued and so injured that I ended up like half-arsing each set and not focusing on technique. Like my technique wasn't any better here compared to the last program. So that's a reason why doing too much volume can actually be bad for technique. You should ensure that every set you do, you actually focus on like optimal technique. You have the energy to do that. Anyways, I followed this program for way too long, and this is definitely one of the programs that really contributed to my like knee problems. Okay, so this is the third Polish program, and this is the program I followed when I kind of like lived in Poland for a while. Like I spent a while there. I think I was there, like in total I was in Poland for like 3 months, but at this point I was in Poland for around 2 months. And yeah, that was quite interesting. So I trained in the club that my old coach trained at. Really nice gym. Everything was old school. Really cool place to train. So I stayed within the club. I was like given meals every day, and I trained twice per day. So the entire focus was training. And this is the most frequently I ever trained, 11 sessions per week. This was up by 2 sessions compared to the previous program. On the previous program, I trained once on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So on this program, I trained twice on Tuesday and Saturday. It was so 1 session every Thursday. So this program was like heavily inspired by like the Bulgarian system. Like as you can see, there is a lot of singles and barely any doubles, and certainly no triples. So let's just look over here. So on day 1, the AM session. Now the times I trained were consistent, like every single day. I made a table later on. If you scroll down in the ebook, you can see I woke up at 8 a.m. and went to bed at 11:30 p.m. So you can just see the schedule here for almost every day. So started training at 10:30 here in the morning. After a meal in the morning, right after that, go for a 1R max in the front squat, and then 5x1. Again, with this program, didn't follow any percentages, didn't use RP or anything like that. The weights chosen were by the coach. The program was given to me, like handwritten at the time, by the coach. Like the numbers were inputted. There were some changes based off how I performed, but that rarely happened. And again, with this program, there's no distinct phases. There's no high volume phase and then a transition into this, like basically a peaking program. There wasn't anything like that. I basically just followed this exact program week to week with very minor changes. So the next exercise after the front squat, snatch 7x1, clean and jerk 6x1. Yeah, these were kind of lighter in the morning. They weren't as heavy as the evening session. Like you can see in the evening session, went for a 1R max in both the snatch and clean and jerk. So the snatch and clean and jerk in the mornings, like day 1's very similar to day 3 if you have a look. When I first started this program, like I mentioned in the book, I was quite weak. Like I wasn't near my best lifts of like 162.5 in the snatch and 195 in the clean jerk. My strength was a bit down, so what I lifted in the mornings was quite low at the beginning. It did increase though. So yeah, after going for a 1R max in the snatch, clean jerk in the evening session, I would then drop 10 kilos in the snatch and a bit more in the clean jerk. It says minus 20 kilos here. And then do 5 sets of 1 on each. The reason the drop in the clean jerk was bigger is because, well, with the clean jerk, the weight is going to be heavier and the clean jerk is more fatiguing. So that's why there was a bigger drop in the weight. And again, the weight chosen was by the coach. And then, of course, front squats again. Just 5 sets of 1. So, yeah, I front squatted like twice per day on multiple days on this program. Like, this is by far the most front squats or the highest front squat frequency I've done. I wouldn't say it's the most front squats I've done, because the volume, like if you look at it, if you just add it all up, it's very low. So I did 10 reps of or 11 reps of front squats this day 1. Like, that is not a lot of volume. In the past, like, I did more volume than this. I did something like, 6x3 in the front squat. Like, that was certainly more volume. So Tuesday, double session again, but it wasn't as heavy as day 1, and there was like more accessory lifts. So we have like snatch, pull, and bench press of all lifts. Yeah, that was prescribed to me. Found that kind of funny because before this program, my bench was pretty good actually. I could bench 160 kilos. So I really questioned the benefit of adding the bench press, because even though my bench press is high, it didn't really help like my overhead strength. Probably would have been better to do like more strict press and push press. So yeah, again, basically the same amount of volume with the front squats. 5x1 in the morning, 6x1 in the evening. And yeah, that was the main problem with this program. There simply just wasn't enough volume for me in the squats. And yeah, you might think that's crazy. Like, looking at this program, it's like, whoa, you're front squatting, 11 times per week. That's crazy, or 10 times a week. But in the past, I was squatting like with way more volume than this. So my strength dropped like while I was training over here. Like, my technique, skill, I guess, in the Olympic lifts improved. Like, I improved my snatch. My clean and jerk like remained the exact same, and maybe even decreased slightly while following this program. And I guess that's just one thing that's unique to me. Like, I mentioned this later on in the book, that like I need to do like a lot of squat volume just to maintain my squat. So moving on here, day 3. Like I said, day 3 is very similar to day 1. You can see here at the end of each day, it just says abdominal exercises. They didn't really take this too seriously. They just let us choose the accessory lifts we wanted to do. I just did like weighted sit-ups, but they didn't really care if we left this out, but they did care if we avoided or didn't do an exercise, like one of the main exercises, like snatch. And honestly, to this day, I really question the need for abdominal exercises. Like, I've gone through cycles not doing any core training, and I've gone through cycles where I train my core a lot. Like, did weighted sit-ups, hybrid extensions, etc. Like a bunch of those like accessory lifts. And I found it doesn't really help with the Olympic lifts, and it doesn't like decrease the chance of injury at all, I noticed. So like while I'm training now, I honestly don't do any like core exercises. I find they just don't do anything. Maybe my core is strong enough right now that I don't need to do any like abdominal exercises, core exercises anymore. And all I need to do now is just maintain my strength with them. But yeah, you find with a lot of these programs, there's like basically no accessory lifts. And the reason for that is like, it isn't because I don't think accessory lifts are useless, and my coach didn't think accessory lifts were useless. The goal is to simply prioritize exercises that like matter the most. So snatch, clean and jerk, squatting strength, doing as much volume and doing as much intensity as possible in those exercises. Adding in a lot of accessory lifts can extend the length of time you're in the gym, which is not a good thing. It also can fatigue you for the lifts that matter. Of course, you could argue that doing certain accessory lifts will prevent injury risk and strengthen like weak areas. But with a program like this, there certainly wasn't like time or energy for me to do like much accessory lifts. So you can see here for day 4, there was still a lot of sets, but the weights used here were quite light. Like I remember for the snatch here, I was only doing 100 kilos, 7 sets of 3. Clean and jerk, it was something like 120, 6x1, and that weight was like kept pretty consistent throughout the program. So Thursday, like the previous programs, was always an easy day, and the front squat was light. This was to help me recover for the heavy session, which was Friday. So Friday was by far the heaviest day. So in the front squat in the morning, went for a 1 rep max, then went very light in the snatch and clean and jerk here, even lighter than day 4. So the weight used in the snatch was something like 80 kilos, clean and jerk only 100 kilos. So just basically a warm-up session. Like the session was extremely short. So after this, got something to eat and then relaxed, and then got back into the gym at 4:30. Went for both 1 rep max in the snatch and 1 rep max in the clean and jerk. And you can see there's no additional sets after doing the 1 rep max. So the goal here was to actually get like new PRs rather than just going heavy like on day 1 and day 3. And of course, there was more front squats, just 5 sets of 1, not a lot of volume at all. So then we move on to day 6. This is Saturday, AM session, very similar to day 2 on the program, but with no bench press this time, and there's more power variations here and a bit more volume. There's doubles in the power snatch and doubles in the power clean and jerk. You can see here, strangely enough, in the evening session, there's back squat. So this is the only time I was back squatting in the program. Like the exercise that really suited me, the exercise I used, to get up to this point, to get up to the point of snatching 162, clean jerking 195. The exercise I used for years to increase my strength, and I was only doing 5 sets of 2 at the end of every week while following this program. Now, I'm not saying like this program, wasn't for me or anything. It was just the fact that I jumped into this program. There was a drastic change from like the previous programs I followed. If instead I started back squatting maybe 5 times a week in this program, front squatting 5 times per week on this program, and then slowly transition to doing more and more front squats, it probably would have been fine. But the fact that I just jumped right into front squatting 10 times per week and back squatting only once meant that I lost a lot of strength, basically. So, yeah, I didn't put any percentages on this program because when I first followed it, the weights were actually kind of light. Like I attached this picture onto the program, like you can click into it on the program. And this was the weights I did for the first week. And I was sent like a piece of paper like this, like every single week with the weights inputted. So like I said, the weight was chosen by the coach. So yeah, this program really like contributed to my like knee injury. Like my knees were destroyed going into this program and they got worse. Like the front squats put like way too much pressure on my knees. But to make it worse, like my squat just got weaker following this program. So like all this effort, like doing front squats like 10 times per week, frequency this high, like it was all pointless in the end pretty much because I didn't progress. Like that was my main problem with this program. Like sure, my snatch got a bit better, but yeah, I just got weaker following this. So this is Gabriel's program that he sent me, and like I mentioned in the ebook, I was getting advice from Gabriel like way before this. So my training was heavily influenced by his training like during this time. I started doing more things like muscle snatches, started doing push presses, even before this program, just playing around those exercises. But I taught during this time, like it was like a very long time since I got a coach. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to have like more structure to my training. So I talked to Gabriel and he sent me this program. Like during this time, like when I first started this program, I wasn't like at my peak, but I was pretty close. But despite that, I still started very light on this program. Like when you first start any program, I think it's best to just start at a very light weight just to get accustomed to the program, see how you respond, get used to the new exercises you do. So before starting this program, like I could snatch 180 kilos with a little training, clean and jerk 210 kilos with a bit of training. Like, they weren't my maxes, but I could hit those weights pretty consistently, I would say. So keeping those weights in mind, you can see like the weights listed here for the first week. Like, this is the first week I mentioned here in brackets. Weights listed here for week 1. Weight is increased week to week, just like the previous programs. The exercises, sets, and reps didn't change week to week. Of course, it did change after week 6 when I transitioned to training twice per day. So the main difference between like this program and the previous programs I did was the increase in variation. Like, I did a lot more exercises on this program. Like you can see here, day 1, muscle snatch times 5, snatch press behind the neck times 5, and overhead squat times 3. So there was a lot of complexes as well, like no foot power snatch. Like, I didn't do variation like this at all with the Polish programs. Like the Polish programs were basically, like the first one I did was basically the Bulgarian program with volume. Like, Gabriel would have distinct phases with his training. Like, he would have like blocks of training where there's like very high variation and high volume. Then he would transition to doing something like the Polish weightlifting program. So at the start, he wanted me to just do like more variation, more volume, like doing these crazy complexes and exercises like no foot power snatch and all that. So if you're confused by the way I wrote down the complexes here, I'll explain it. So for day 1, there's muscle snatch times 5, snatch press times 5, overhead squat times 5. 60 kilos, 3 sets of 1, 70 kilos, 3 sets of 1. So for the first set, 60 kilos, I did 5 muscle snatches, followed by 5 snatch behind the neck, followed by 3 overhead squats with 60 kilos. I did that 3 times, and then I did that with 70 kilos. And then again, if you look at day 5, for 1 set with 60 kilos, I did 5 muscle snatches, followed by 3 overhead squats. Did 2 sets of that with 60 kilos, and then 3 sets of that with 70 kilos. That doesn't mean a clean and jerk followed by a clean and jerk. It means 1 clean, 2 jerks. So with 140 kilos, for the first set, I did 1 clean followed by 2 jerks. Did that for 2 sets. 2 sets with 150 kilos, 1 set 160, 1 set with 170. So I hope that makes sense. So Gabriel was a big fan of these muscle snatch complexes. He reasoned it was a really good way to warm up. He said he would do something like this like pretty much every session. He'd do like multiple reps in the muscle snatches, behind the neck presses. He was big like on upper body exercises. This is something that I needed to work on. Like, sure, my upper body was strong, like bench press wise, but with strict press and push press, they were very weak. And it's not just about like pure strength. Like, if you get a powerlifter, they might be able to like strict press a lot of weight, bench press a lot of weight with questionable form. But the question is, could they do like behind the neck snatch, grip press with really good technique? Could they do push press with good technique? So there was a lot of variation on this program, like with the upper body exercises. So I needed to increase every aspect of strength with those exercises. So I needed to improve my jerk, dip and drive strength. I needed to increase my overhead stability, everything. And another major difference between this program and the previous programs is the ascending sets. Like you can see here for the back squat on day 1, 180 kilos, 200 kilos, 210 kilos. And you can see on some of the exercises, the sets, like the reps actually change as the weight increases. So if you go down to day 6, you can see for the front squat, I started with 150 kilos and did 2 triples with that weight and finished at 190 for a double. So the weight usually just started at like a moderate weight and then gradually increased. And I mentioned like the advantages of doing that in the ebook. So once again, just like the previous programs, the weight used was chosen by the coach. It wasn't based off any percentages or anything really. The weight simply increased week to week with no changes to the exercises. So yeah, this was part 1 of the program. I wanted to transition into training twice per day once again, because I thought that was like the best way to progress. And funny enough, when I started training twice per day, the whole COVID thing happened. So it kind of worked out well, actually, because I had the home gym, allowed easy access to the gym, so I didn't have to travel to the gym. So training twice per day was quite easy. So this is part 2 of Gabriel's program. This is where I trained twice per day, 9 times per week. And the weights inputted here are the weights that I did for week 9 on the program. But with every other week, the exercises, the sets and reps were pretty much the exact same. So you'll notice here with this program compared to the last one that lasted 6 weeks, there's a lot less variation, I would say, overall, and just much more snatch and clean and jerk and lifts closely related to those 2 movements. So I was pretty strong when I followed this program. Like towards the end of the program, on the second last week, I hit a 180 snatch and I cleaned 220 kilos. So definitely not weak at the end of this program. And I got a lot of good advice about my technique, and my upper body strength increased for sure while following this program. So like I mentioned with the Polish program, there's 2 different ways you can train twice per day. So if you look at this table here, Gabriel's program was like example 1 here, where the strength exercises and barely any Olympic lifts were in the morning, and the majority of the work with the Olympic lifts was in the evening. It wasn't like the Polish program where there was like lighter Olympic lifts in the morning and then heavier Olympic lifts in the evening. I guess the idea behind the Polish program was to just get as much exposure as possible to the Olympic lifts to work on technique, whereas the approach here was just to allow recovery and have as much energy as possible when doing the Olympic lifts in the evening. Like, just imagine here for day 1, you can see it's muscle snatch first, back squat, clean deadlift, all strength exercises pretty much. Imagine instead just doing 1 session this day. So you would start out by doing snatch and then doing the power clean and jerk for multiple sets, and then adding on more strength exercises, more exercises after that. If you did all these exercises in 1 session, it would be way too much to handle. Of course, you could probably do it, but you wouldn't be able to lift as much weight compared to if you just split up the session into 2. So that's the basic idea with training twice per day here. And it certainly did work. Like I certainly had a lot of energy in the morning and the evening to perform all the exercises listed here. And I did mention before that doing like heavy weights in the morning with strength exercises is no real problem. Doing that with the snatch and clean and jerk can be very difficult in the morning. Also, by the time I got on to the evening session, I trained twice per day, I felt like I was warmed up from the strength exercises I did in the morning. But overall, if I'm being honest, I actually like the Polish approach better, believe it or not. Obviously, that Polish program was designed terribly. I was not ready for it, but I do like the idea of doing as many Olympic lifts as possible, as frequently as possible. That is just so good for technique development. And it's basically the number 1 benefit from training like multiple times a day. So even though I said this program is more specific compared to part 1, there is still a lot more variation compared to like the Polish programs and the programs I did in the past. Like there's still hang power snatch above the knee here. There's deficit snatch pulls. I actually asked Gabriel if I could add in that exercise because I found that exercise really helped me in the past with my snatch pull. There's strict press, there's muscle clean, but a lot of these exercises are kind of just used as a warm-up, like that muscle snatch on day 1. Like that wasn't too difficult to do. It's not a very fatiguing exercise. The same with the muscle clean, that's like very light, a low stress exercise. But you'll notice an interesting thing on this program and with part 1, that day 4, it's actually not light like it is. It's not an easy day like it was on the Polish programs. Also on day 5, there wasn't both a heavy snatch and a heavy clean and jerk. It was only a heavy snatch, and it's actually on Wednesday that I went heavy on the clean and jerk. So the volume is like more spread out on this program compared to the Polish programs. But you can see like on a lot of these like upper body exercises, there's plenty of upper body exercises on this program, but they're not heavy, they're not hard. They're mostly just used as a warm-up, kind of used to improve technique, to improve like overhead stability, not really used to increase my upper body strength. Like the majority of the strength I gained was in the first phase, actually. Like for example, here on day 6 there was muscle snatch 70 kilos, 5x5. Now that was very easy for me to do, so the purpose of that exercise was more on like technique. Like strength exercises aren't just used to improve your strength, they can also be used to improve your technique. Like you could argue that, you know, doing a strict press can improve your jerk technique. Like if I prescribed strict press to a beginner weightlifter, it'd be to improve like their overhead position. It's a slowed down version of the jerk, so they can really focus on like the positioning overhead, like all that. I'd also argue that exercises like the clean pull and the snatch pull are just as much like technique exercises as strength exercises. So yeah, that was basically Gabriel's program. And shortly after this, I actually got some strict press PRs and front squat PRs, and then I moved on to my own programming. So this was the program that I followed when I hit my best lifts of all time. So I hit a 195 kilo snatch, a 225 kilo clean and jerk, and I cleaned 235 kilos on this program. I also front squatted 260 kilos during this program. So I followed this style of programming shortly after finishing Gabriel's program. So I wasn't weak at all. I was near my peak level of strength. You could say that Gabriel's program was kind of like a high variation strength block for me. And then I moved on to a peaking block, which is this. But yeah, I followed this style of programming for quite a while, and consistency was really the key. Like I hit big weights very often during this time, and you'll notice that this program is quite similar to the previous 2 videos with the full week of training commentary. However, the difference here is that there's certainly more sets. Like I did a lot of singles here, a lot of sets. Like you can see here for day 1, the snatch 65 to 80%. I did 10 to 12 singles, and I did something similar to that in the clean and jerk on day 2. So this style of programming, not exactly Bulgarian style programming. Like I didn't train like multiple times in a day. I actually just kept it to 6 times per week, believe it or not. And this is the most progress I made in a very long time. So I kind of just discovered that perhaps like training 6 times per week was better to me versus 9 times per week. So the exercises on this program are very basic, very specific, a lot of just pure snatch and clean and jerk. And like I said, consistency was the key on this program. I went heavy on the snatch and clean and jerk pretty much every week while I followed this. So for most weeks, I snatched at least 170 and clean and jerked at least 200 kilos. Like my clean and jerk progression definitely lagged behind my snatch for years prior to this, and I discovered the thing that really helped improve my clean and jerk was just by doing these multiple singles, like just doing a crazy amount of singles, like up to 12 singles, like I wrote down here in the program. So I would start at like a moderate weight in the clean and jerk, let's say like 150 kilos, and then slowly and gradually increase this perhaps up to even like 200 kilos in a session. And this wasn't even like the heavy session. Like this wasn't for day 5. I'd sometimes do that for day 2. So I believe that was the real thing that helped me like progress my clean and jerk. Also, I did a bunch of front squatting, as you can see, and this is exactly how I improved my front squat. Like of course my best front squat way before this was 250 kilos paused. I never tried to do a regular front squat around that time, but it was years since I hit 250 in front squats. So getting my front squat up to 260 kilos during this time was a huge achievement. Also keep in mind, when I did 250 kilos pulse front squat, my body weight was far heavier compared to like during this time. So if you listen to my like criticisms with the previous programs, like with the Polish programs, the problem with those, like the one I did in Poland, the problem wasn't the multiple singles I was doing, like in the Olympic lifts. The problem was the lack of volume in the squats. So I corrected that problem with this program by doing just more squats. Like I did up to 20 sets in the front squat. I still did volume in the back squat, like you can see on day 2 and day 1. I did 6x3. That was really the key, like to maintaining my squat. Like when I followed Gabriel's program, everything was working out fine. The problem was my squat was not as strong as it should have been. Like during this program, I did do 280 kilos for a double. Like that's the most I squatted, but that was definitely a grinder during the time, and that was far away from my best. Like I needed to squat 300 or more to be able to clean and jerk 230 kilos. But yeah, this program basically applies principles from like the first style of training I did, like where I would still do volume on the strength exercises, but just stick to singles on the Olympic lifts. And I found that this really worked for me. Also, psychologically, I just preferred doing singles at the time. Like, I just wasn't in the mood to do something like 6x3 in the snatch. I much preferred going heavier in the snatch and on the clean and jerk. Like, I know I made the point that if you increase the volume you're doing on Olympic lifts, you just get more practice overall. But I found when I did singles, like during this time, like every set I did, I had like more focused compared to if I did like a set of 3 or a set of 2 in the clean jerk. Like a drawback of doing something like a couple of sets of 3 in the snatch is you can just half-arse the sets because it's lighter compared to doing a single. Like for example, if you had to do 120 kilos in the snatch, 6 sets of 3, you could just do a couple of sets, make a couple of mistakes, but still manage to complete sets because the weight is lighter. Whereas if you did something like 140 kilos for 6 sets of 1, you have to focus on each one of those sets because the weight is heavy and you have to use optimal technique to make the weights. Now, obviously, when you do something like 6x1 in the snatch, that is like 1/3 the practice compared to doing 6x3. So in this program, I just took it to the extreme and did multiple singles. And that's why I did like 10 to 12 singles on like snatch, power clean and jerk, all those exercises. So yeah, that is basically the program. Not much more to say.